All right, welcome to another deep dive. Today we're looking at, a topic that's near and dear to many people's hearts, I think, becoming a published author. You've
Yes.
shared some audio with us from Brian Tracy,
Brian Tracy, yeah.
and he's got a lot to say about, how to actually make that dream a reality. So
Yeah.
we're going to dig into all that today. So, before we jump in, I guess the first question is, where do we even start with this whole, quest to become a published author? What's the lay of the land, so to speak?
Well, I think a good place to start is with, well, Brian Tracy doesn't sugarcoat it. He actually points out right from the beginning that,
Yeah.
only 1 in 100 submitted books actually gets published.
Whoa.
Yeah. So that's something to keep in mind right from the beginning. It's a tough business. And
That's a little daunting.
yeah, it is.
It's a little daunting to hear that right out the gate.
But, he explains why.
Yeah.
And
Why is that?
well, publishers, they're businesses,
Yeah.
right? So they have to make tough decisions about which books are going to sell, which books are going to generate a profit.
Right.
He even tells this anecdote about a publisher
Whoa.
who lost $250,000 on a single book.
Oof. That's
So that's a lot of money.
a big risk. I mean, that
Yeah.
really just underscores the fact that this is a business.
Exactly.
Like they're not just, throwing books out there willy-nilly,
Right.
share nice stories.
Exactly. They have to make tough decisions. And that's why, it's so crucial to understand the 80-20 rule.
80-20 rule.
Yeah. So
Fill me in.
just like in a lot of industries, a very small percentage of books generate the vast majority of the profits. So publishers, they're really looking for those potential blockbusters. They're looking for the books that are
Sure,
going to
yeah.
be the big hits.
So how do we, as writers, as aspiring authors, increase our chances? I mean, what can we do to, kind of stack the deck in our favor?
Well, Brian Tracy talks about becoming publishable. That means writing a book that not only you love, but also has a real chance of resonating with a large audience. And, it's about understanding the market.
So it's not just about, pouring your heart out onto the page.
Right, exactly. It's got to be something that people actually want to read.
Okay, so you've got to think about the audience.
Yes, absolutely. And think about things like genre conventions, comparable titles, what's already out there, what are readers expecting, but also how can you offer a fresh perspective?
So finding that balance, right, between giving them what they want, but also bringing something new to the table.
Precisely. And one of the key things he talks about is the subject, the title, and the subtitle.
Oh, okay, so the packaging of the book.
Yes, it's crucial. Especially for nonfiction, he says the best titles often use like a powerful imperative verb,
Okay.
like swim with the sharks or think and grow rich, titles like that.
I've definitely seen those books around.
Yeah, and they immediately tell you
Yeah.
what the book is about and what you're going to gain from reading it.
It's very action-oriented, right? It's like, do this.
Exactly. And they create a sense of urgency, like intrigue. They're really trying to hook the reader
Got it.
before they even open the book.
It's that first impression, right?
It is.
Just like, if you're going on a job interview,
Exactly.
you want to make sure that you're standing out from the crowd.
Right. He actually talks about this subway test. Have you heard of
The
this?
subway test, no.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Some publishers use this, and it's basically, would someone be comfortable holding up your book on a crowded subway? Would the title
Interesting.
spark curiosity in other passengers? Just that simple test.
I love that. I mean, it really makes you think about it from the reader's perspective.
Right.
Like if
Absolutely.
I was, crammed in there,
Yeah,
would I be proud to be holding up this book?
exactly. Exactly.
That's a great way to think about it. Now, even with a great title, sometimes a book needs a little bit of, repackaging.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of that story Brian Tracy told about Robert Ringer's book,
Oh, yeah.
which was originally called How to Negotiate Successfully. It was a
Yeah.
total flop, right?
Huge flop.
Nobody wanted to read it. But then
Yeah.
he changed the title to Winning Through Intimidation.
Yeah. And it became a massive bestseller.
Same content,
Same content, completely different response.
just the way it was presented made all the
It
difference.
shows you the power of presentation. Even just that subtle shift in framing
Wow.
can completely change how readers perceive a book.
Okay, so we've got a great title. We've got a concept that people are interested in.
Yeah.
What about the actual, nuts and bolts of writing? What does Brian Tracy say about getting that done?
Well, he really emphasizes the importance of developing consistent writing habits.
Okay.
He compares it to exercising. You need to work those writing muscles regularly.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. And he suggests reading something in your field every day, writing 1,000 to 2,000 words a day.
Wow, that's a lot.
It is, yeah.
Is that realistic for everyone, do you think?
Well, Brian Tracy is a very prolific writer. I mean, he's written over 70 books.
That's true. He's a machine.
Right.
He churns them out.
So it might not be feasible for everyone to hit those exact numbers every single day.
Right.
But I think the core principle is really sound. It's about consistency.
Okay, so maybe it's not about the specific number of words, but just making sure that you're doing something every day.
Yes, find a pace that works for you and stick to it, even if it's just a few hundred words.
Right, just got to keep moving forward.
And, he tells that story of a successful businessman who wrote just 1 page a day.
Oh, wow.
And over a year, that added up to a full manuscript.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's like slow and steady wins the race. Right.
Exactly. Small, consistent actions over time.
I like that.
Yeah.
He also had some great advice about reading your work aloud.
Oh, yes. Such a simple but effective technique.
Yeah.
It forces you to slow down, listen to how your words sound. You'd be surprised how many clunky phrases or off-word sentences you catch when you do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely experienced that, where you're kind of reading through it in your head, and you're like, oh, this sounds great.
Yeah.
And then you read it out loud, you're like, oh, that's a mouthful.
Exactly. It's like you've got a built-in editor.
Yeah.
In your own voice.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
So we've been focusing mainly on nonfiction so far.
Mm-hmm.
What about those of us who are, drawn to writing fiction?
Yeah.
Does Brian Tracy have any guidance for the aspiring novelists out there?
He does, yeah. He believes that even fiction needs to be well-structured and engaging. And he suggests 5 key points.
5 key points, okay.
For crafting a really compelling story.
Lay it on me.
All right, so first, starting strong.
Okay, I like that. Got to hook them from the beginning.
Exactly. You want to grab their attention from page 1, make them want to keep reading.
Like a movie, right. You want that opening scene to just be like, boom.
Exactly. He actually uses the example of the movie Terminator.
Oh, yeah. What a great opening scene.
Talk about starting with a bang.
Absolutely.
So how can you translate that same visual and emotional impact
Yeah.
into words on a page?
I love that. It makes me think about, some of those first lines of classic novels that just, immediately draw you in.
Right.
What else does he recommend for fiction writers?
Well, he suggests studying great writers like Ernest Hemingway, known for his, concise, powerful prose.
The Elements of Style.
Yes, The Elements of Style by Strunk and White. That's a classic.
I've heard so much about that book. I really need to read it.
Yeah, it's a must-read for any writer.
Okay.
Regardless of genre, it's just packed with practical advice on writing clear, concise, engaging prose.
Awesome. And even though we're talking about fiction here, Brian Tracy still emphasizes the importance of having a message, like, a point you want to convey through your story.
Yes, absolutely. Even a fantastical world or a thrilling plot, there should be something deeper at its core.
Okay, so you've poured your heart and soul into this manuscript, whether it's fiction or nonfiction.
Mm-hmm.
You've got your killer title.
Yeah.
You've got that engaging opening. You've got your profound message.
Right.
Now, how do you actually get this thing into the hands of a publisher?
Well, that's where the literary agent comes in.
A literary agent, okay.
Brian Tracy compares it to selling a house. You need a professional realtor to represent you and guide you through the process.
Okay, so why is an agent so crucial in the publishing world?
They have connections.
Okay.
They have industry knowledge, and they have negotiating skills that most writers just don't have. And publishers often prefer to work with authors who have agents because it suggests that the author is serious and has someone advocating for their work.
So they're like your champion in the publishing world.
Exactly.
So how do you find a good literary agent? Like, how do you even begin to search for one?
Well, Brian Tracy specifically recommends Jeff Herman's Guide to Book Publishers, Editors, and Literary Agents.
Okay, what's so special about that particular resource?
Well, it's updated every year.
Okay.
And it provides a really comprehensive list of agents and publishers.
Right.
Their contact information, the types of books they're looking for.
So it's like a roadmap, basically.
Exactly. It takes some of the guesswork out of finding the right people to connect with.
So you've found your agent. You've got this amazing book,
Yeah.
but even with a fantastic agent, you still need a great pitch.
Right.
You need something to actually get the publishers interested.
Absolutely.
And that's where the query letter comes in.
A query letter, it's like a first date.
Okay, first date with a publisher.
Exactly.
You got to make a good impression.
You got to make a good first impression.
All right, this is getting really interesting. But before we dive into the secrets of the query letter, we're going to take a quick break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with more publishing wisdom from Brian Tracy. Okay, so we're back and ready to talk about, the query letter, the all-important query letter.
Yeah.
It's got to be good. I mean, this is your book's first impression.
It really is. Brian Tracy emphasizes that it needs to cut through the noise. I mean, agents and editors, they get a ton of these every single day.
Yeah.
You have to make yours stand out.
It's almost like you're, vying for a spot on a crowded stage, and you got to be the one that shines the brightest. So how do you create a query letter that really pops?
Well, he suggests starting with a strong hook.
Okay.
Something that instantly piques their interest. Think of it like the opening line of a great novel
But
or a news headline you just can't help but click on.
Okay, so skip the long-winded introductions and get straight to the point.
Exactly. Clearly state what your book is about, who the target audience is, and why it's different from anything else that's out there.
Make it unique.
Yes. And don't forget personalization.
What do you mean by that?
Tailor it to a specific agent or editor. Show them that you've done your research,
Okay.
that you're genuinely interested in working with them.
So you're not just sending out like a form letter to every agent.
Right, exactly. He even suggests calling their office beforehand just to get the correct spelling of their name.
Wow. Okay. So attention to detail, really
Yeah.
showing that you care, that you're professional.
You're willing to go the extra mile.
Okay. So shifting gears a little bit, Brian Tracy also talks about something called an income opportunity.
Yeah, he does mention that.
Now, I know we're here to talk about, becoming a published author, but I have to admit, I'm a little bit curious about this. What kind of income opportunity did he have in mind?
Well, he mentions that he will be sharing an opportunity that changed his life and the lives of thousands of other people.
Okay, interesting. But maybe we should save that discussion for another deep dive. We can always come back and explore Brian Tracy's, entrepreneurial advice, and maybe even delve into those income opportunities in more detail.
No game if you are.
All right. So circling back to publishing, we've covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah, we have.
I mean, we've talked about market realities, writing habits, crafting that captivating query letter.
Right.
Is there anything else that really stands out to you as being particularly important for aspiring authors?
Well, I think his emphasis on understanding the business side of publishing is really crucial. It's not just about writing a good book. It's about writing a book that people will actually want to read and buy.
Finding that sweet spot, right?
Right.
Between your passion
Yes.
and what the market wants.
Exactly. You need to know your genre. You need to know your target audience.
That's like anything else. If you want to be successful, you gotta know your market.
Absolutely. And, never underestimate the power of feedback. Seek out beta readers you trust, people whose opinions you value. Be open to constructive criticism. They can really help you see things that you might have missed.
I know that can be hard to hear sometimes.
Yeah.
You've put so much work into something.
Of course, yeah. But,
But you're right.
it's so valuable for growth.
Yeah.
Another thing that really struck me was his emphasis on finding a great literary agent. It can really make all the difference.
Well, Brian Tracy really emphasized that traditional publishing route, finding an agent, going through that whole process. Some authors have found success through self-publishing.
Right.
What are your thoughts on kind of the pros and cons of each approach?
That's a good question. Both traditional publishing and self-publishing, they have their own unique advantages and disadvantages.
Like with traditional publishing, you get, the credibility
Yes.
of an established publishing house. They have the
Yeah,
reach.
right.
But with self-publishing, you have so much more control over your work.
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head. Traditional publishing can open doors to a wider audience and provide valuable editorial support, but it can also be a very long and challenging process, and there's no guarantee of success.
And self-publishing can give you more creative freedom, potentially higher royalties,
Yeah,
but then you have to handle all the marketing and distribution yourself.
exactly. So it really comes down to your personal goals
Right.
and priorities as an author.
So do your research and choose the path that feels right for you and for your book.
Exactly.
Before we move on to part 3, I thought it'd be fun to kind of take a moment and reflect.
Hmm.
If you could ask Brian Tracy one question about writing or publishing, what would it be?
Oh, that's a good one. It's like having the chance to pick the brain of a master.
Yeah.
I would probably ask him about the biggest challenges he's faced in his career
Okay.
and how he overcame them. What were the biggest hurdles that he had to jump over?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think I would ask him for his advice on staying motivated and persevering through rejection,
Ooh.
because I think that's something that, every writer faces at some point.
Absolutely. It's part of the process, but it's tough.
It is tough. But hearing how, someone like Brian Tracy, who's achieved so much, how he navigated those setbacks, I think would be really insightful. We'd also love to hear what questions you have for Brian Tracy, so be sure to share those with us on social media using the hashtag #DeepDiveQuestions. And in our final part, we're going to tackle some of those listener questions and maybe offer some additional insights from our own experiences in the world of writing and publishing. So stick around for those final thoughts. Welcome back to our deep dive on becoming a published author, and now we're going to tackle some of your questions. We asked you to send them in using hashtag #DeepDiveQuestions, and you guys did not disappoint.
So many great questions. Really shows how much people are thinking about this.
Absolutely. So let's jump right in. One listener asks, Brian Tracy talks a lot about understanding the market, but what if my book idea is a bit niche or unconventional? Should I just give up on it?
Well, I think a lot of writers wrestle with that. It's that balance between writing what you're passionate about
Yeah.
and what you think will sell.
It's the age-old dilemma, right? Follow your heart or follow the money.
But it doesn't have to be an either situation. Even niche topics can have really dedicated audiences.
Hmm.
The key is to do your research.
Okay.
See if there's a market for your book. Even if it's not a massive one, there might be a small but passionate group of readers who are just, dying to read what you have to say.
So don't be afraid to explore those unconventional ideas.
Exactly.
Just be smart about it.
Right. Do your homework, research comparable titles, consider how you can position your book to reach those niche readers.
Another listener asks, Brian Tracy suggests writing 1,000 to 2,000 words per day. That seems like a lot. How can I possibly find the time with a full-time job and other responsibilities? Yeah, that's a real struggle for a lot of people.
Right. It's like trying to fit in a workout
Right.
when you've got, a million other things going on. Exactly. But, think back to that story that Brian Tracy shared about the businessman who wrote just 1 page a day.
Right.
Small, consistent actions can really add up.
So maybe it's about shifting your mindset. Instead of thinking I have to write a whole chapter today, it's more like, okay, I can carve out 30 minutes to write a few paragraphs.
Exactly. It's about finding those pockets of time, even if they're short, and making them sacred for your writing.
Okay. So maybe early in the morning before everyone else is awake.
Yeah.
Or late at night when the house is quiet.
Or even your lunch break.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, this next question is one that I think, every writer has thought about at some point. How do you know when your book is actually finished? Is there ever a point where you just have to stop editing and let it go?
Oh, that's a tough one. The eternal question. When to hit publish. It's so tempting to keep to keep polishing, but at some point you have to release your creation into the world.
Otherwise, you'll just be stuck in editing purgatory forever.
Exactly. And I've definitely been there. It's a delicate balance between striving for excellence and knowing when to trust your gut.
So how do you find that balance?
Well, one thing is getting feedback from trusted beta readers, people whose opinions you value, who understand your genre. They can offer a fresh perspective and help you identify areas that might need a bit more attention. But ultimately, you have to trust yourself, trust your instincts as a writer.
Yeah, sometimes you just gotta let it go. And remember, even if you spot a typo after the book's out there,
right,
it's not the end of the world. You can always make changes in future editions.
Right, exactly. Okay, last but not least, we have a listener who asks, what's the single most important piece of advice Brian Tracy gives that every aspiring author should take to heart?
That's a great question. It's hard to pick just one.
I know, there are so many gems,
Mhm.
but I think for me, it's his emphasis on being publishable.
I think that's a really good one. It's such a powerful concept.
Yeah.
It's not just about writing for yourself.
Right.
It's about writing with an awareness of the market, the readers, what makes a book stand out.
Understanding genre conventions, crafting a strong hook, presenting your work in a way that grabs attention and makes people want to read it.
And let's not forget the importance of persistence and resilience. I mean, Brian Tracy himself, he faced tons of rejection early in his career.
Yeah, he did.
He could have easily given up, but he didn't. And so, to all you aspiring authors out there, keep writing, keep learning, and never stop believing in the power of your words. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring. And remember, the best stories are yet to be written.